Data coming from the National Bureau of Statistics shows that Nigeria's inflation rate currently stands at 33.2%. But the question now is, what are the options for the monetary and fiscal sides of government towards moderating and curbing the rising inflationary pressures? And my guest is now with me, Bayonle Omoyele. Thank you for joining us on Business Daily.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I would like to start off, by knowing what your reaction was. I mean, we have seen the persistent increase in inflation over time. What do you characterize this inflationary pressure to be, especially seeing headline inflation standing at 33.2% and food inflation at over 40%?
You see, it is important that we understand that Nigeria is a special country. And the way our monetary and fiscal policy works is not the same with what could happen in other countries because of the peculiarities in this country. Okay? Now, let's give an instance. Federal government is doing the best they could do in order to curb this inflation. And we have seen it in the report of the NPR where CBN says that the interest rate should be increased from this to 24.75. This is an art to reduce inflation. We have seen where CBN says that cash reserve ratio of commercial banks should be pegged at 45%. The implication of this is that banks will not be able to advance much loan to people as expected because of the reserve ratio. And what happens, people will not be able to access loan as such. And because of that, people will be able to save more. And as people are saving, inflation will be reduced. Okay? This is the standard. This is how it's supposed to be in paper. But now let's talk about Nigerian peculiarity. The factors that exist in this country that is off book that we need to look into. If governments are trying to put together policies that works, but we still have some other peculiarities that could affect the government plans, and we need to talk about it. Now let's begin. Federal government is trying to reduce the exchange rates, and we have seen it has reduced from 1,900, we now have it about 1,061 naira as of this morning. But the funniest part, prices of goods in the market is just reduced. Now, when you talk to these people, they call themselves capitalists, and it's annoying. Sorry, it's kind of bothering me. When dollar was increasing and you go to the market and want to buy stocks, they will tell you that because dollar increased, their price will increase. Right? Now, dollar is decreasing. We have seen this. It's coming down drastically. But go to the same shop, you want to buy a particular goods, they will tell you that it is a no stock. This is peculiarity, and we need to look into it. Right? I was watching a program, and I saw one of the Senate members. He said that for this government to work, the number of dollars in the Senate have to be reduced.
The number of dollars in the Senate?
In the Senate have to be reduced, right? I had the privilege I was posted to the Senate for my National Youth Service, though I rejected myself because they were not paying, right? And I was able to flow with what he said on the national TV. And if the senators in this country are being sincere, they're equally part of the problem we're talking about. Because most of them don't spend naira, they spend dollars.
So you're saying that, is this the case of, Nigeria, the Nigerian economy being too dollarized? Or I'm trying to understand, the connection between the naira strengthening at this point and the prices of basic commodities not dropping.
I'm trying to point to the peculiarities
that Nigeria currently has.
Yes, that we need to look into. And once we look into these peculiarities, it affects the global view of the whole situation. Now, right now, the 33.2 or 3% of the inflation should have been reduced because dollar is coming down drastically, but yet it's not. Instead, it's coming up. And there's another problem looming. Federal government is planning to increase the minimum wage. Probably the announcement will be maybe on the 1st of May, I don't know, just to make Nigeria happy.
On Workers' Day.
On Workers' Day. Maybe next month, maybe next 2 months. Already in January, federal government already set up a committee to look into the minimum wage. Believe me, once that happens, the inflation will increase. That part will affect the inflation of the country. But for that to be curbed, for that to be minimal, we need to understand the Nigerian peculiarities and have look at how we can solve the problem. CBN is trying. Part of the peculiarities that affect dollar increment, the exchange rate, was the BDC. And we have seen that CBN withdrew licenses of about 4,173 BDCs. And when this happened, we've seen the drastic reduction in the exchange rates.
Well, let me take you from there now, Mr. Bayonle, because like you rightly pointed out, there has been, quite a number of actions that we've seen, especially from the monetary side, from the CBN. Yemi Cardoso over time has, since his becoming the CBN governor, we've seen quite a lot, being introduced from, from the BDC's angle to the responsibility of the CBN now, staying away from what we have seen in the past, where the CBN played the role of even the fiscal side of government. But now, aside from what the monetary side of government is doing, are you saying the Federal Ministry of Finance, that's the fiscal side of government now, work side by side the monetary side? Is there a synergy between both sides towards curbing inflation? Because like I said, we have seen quite a lot from the monetary side, but is it enough?
Okay, well, it's not enough, but don't forget there is a committee of monetary and fiscal committees between CBN and the Ministry of Finance, where the members of CBN are part of the committee, the members of Ministry of Finance are part of the committee. So they work, interwovenly, they work together in order to achieve a broader goals for the country. That being said, now we need to do a particular thing in fiscal, which I don't know why it has not been done. For Nigeria to be more stabilized, federal government needs to increase its spending. Now, you see, when federal government increases spending, there'll be money. It creates employment for people. And when there is an employment, inflation reduces. Okay? It is a known fact in economics that when you are trying to fight inflation, unemployment will increase. And when unemployment increases, the growth of the country stagnates. So most time, government will actually fight one while the others is being affected. But there is a way we can make this thing work interchangeably. While we are trying to curb the inflation, the fiscal policies could increase government spending, reduces tax of the people, and doing so, there will be employment opportunities. And if we're able to have this, if we're able to introduce this before the introduction of the minimum wage, I can assure you that it will reduce the impact of the minimum wage. And talking of minimum wage, I think the Nigerian Labour Congress and the TUC needs to have economists in the association, so that they don't fight offline. They're supposed to be fighting for the country, and it's understandable that when they're doing this, they should fight based on data. They should fight based on what is achievable and what is not. When they started a lot of this agitation, I saw when the NLC says that the minimum wage they want is 1 million. From 1 million, it was reduced to 715,000. TUC, I think they are very smart. On their side, they started with 415,000. But later, both of them came together and united on maybe 615,000 minimum wage. And to me, I think it's not feasible, right? Because initially, before the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came on board, was buying fuel at around 200. But immediately, on May 29, he announced subsidy removal. And that's critical things. That changed from 200 to about 600. If you check, that is about 300%, right? So if minimum wage is being pegged at 30,000, and you're not demanding for 15,000, is that feasible?
Feasibility in the sense of, too much money in circulation.
Too much money.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's not doable, so to say. And I'll be surprised if federal government meet up with that 715,000 request from TUC and NLC. So I'm proposing that it should be around maybe 200,000, maybe 150,000, just to start with, so that we don't take things out of line and in return backfires on the economy.
Indeed. Well, I believe there are some economic indicators and metrics that will be used to, come up with a figure at the end of the day. But let's talk to, issues around food inflation. I say this because Nigeria is a country of over 205 million people, and this is according to data from the National Population Commission. But with such high numbers, I believe we should be able to, produce what we eat and eat what we produce. Unfortunately, that is not the case. And we have seen, quite a number of reasons that has brought Nigeria to this point. But let me hear from you now. Are there some roles that you believe beyond the federal government, at the state levels, at the local government levels, that you think can be, issues that can be addressed towards nipping inflation in the bud, especially, in the area of agriculture? What are your recommendations, especially towards the food inflation, which currently, like I stated, is over 40%?
See, when we talk of food inflation, it is important that we know the genesis, okay? Now, the major problem we are having in this part is because of insecurity. There is no way you can talk of production without talking of security. Okay, gone are the days when farmers can go to their farms, stay in their farm for a month, for 2 months without having this fear factor of, what could go wrong. But now we have seen cases where farmers are unable to go to farm. Okay, I was reading a report one time when some people that gotten loan during the last administration of the CBN says that they could not go to farm because of the insecurities after collecting Nigeria money.
And are unable to pay back the
I'm unable to pay back. And in their own defense, they say that, okay, instead of, using that money for the purpose it was meant for, instead, they were using it to acquire assets. Okay, maybe anything that comes from your assets will be used to pay back the loan. You see how government policies well defined gone wrong. Okay, so we have it well defined. Okay, federal government introduced 200 billion palliative through the Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment. And I was bitter to see that information did not go around. I was bitter to see that Ministry of Trade and Investment came to say that, oh, okay, we have disbursed so amounts of money to people in the manufacturing sector, to people in this, without giving us data, without giving us the total amount that has been disbursed, without letting us know that, okay, this company, this social company has gotten this fund.
That's transparency.
Transparency and accountability. So if this is not there, this policy might go wrong. The people that are supposed to get this fund, that will in turn make Nigeria better, that will reduce that food inflation, won't have gotten it. And by the time we are now looking at the data from a very broad perspective, we'll fail to understand the peculiarities in this country. So government on its own saying that, okay, the inflation of the food is going to come to this level, and instead introduce palliative, introduce government grants at 9%. At 9%. That is enough to turn around the manufacturing sector in this country. But when the people in charge, of course, I cannot allege that they have not done what they're supposed to do. What I'm saying is they should come out with openness. They should be accountable. There should be an accountability. If so amount of money has been disbursed, let us know who are those that have gotten this fund so that it's verifiable. So that if they are not doing what they're supposed to do, then just be able to talk. What is going on with this company? And having said that, it is important that Nigerian government, either the governors or the federal government, looks into the insecurity. There is no way there will be persistent insecurities and you expect people to go to the farm. So that is the problem we are having with the inflation on food.
Issues around security.
Insecurity.
Okay, so you have already started, reeling out solutions towards these problems, especially in the area of food inflation. You talked about the issue of security, and addressing that. But I'd like for you to elaborate more on, short-term inflation solutions or short-term inflation management that should be, introduced at this point, because, like you have rightly stated, insecurity is one that has driven food inflation to over 40% as we speak. So what other management or inflation management procedures are you suggesting that could be brought into place at this point?
I'll still reiterate this. When it's come to paperwork, when it's come to policies, when it's come to getting things done rightly on paper, I think I give kudos to the Nigerian government. But the problem is when it's come to the implementation, the executions, the management, the following up, the evaluation of these policies. And that is where we are lacking behind. Now, for instance, let's talk about rice. Rice. The rice we are producing in this country. Someone's selling 75,000, someone's selling 80,000. So what are the factors that makes rice to get to that level? The rice we used to buy 19,800, the rice similar we used to buy 23,000. As at the time the claim is dollar, the increment in dollar, the exchange rate, that has been coming down, and yet the price of rice hasn't come down. So it is important for federal government to set up price monitoring committee. And I don't know if FCCPC mandate is included in monitoring prices. But if it's not, instead of setting up another agency agency, I think that federal government can add that to FCCPC's mandates so that we can monitor all of these things. By the time FCCPC shuts down one company because they face to incline with the present price, with the present economic situation, others is going to learn. By the time we shut 1, 2, 3 companies, doing well company that you fail to meet up with this, others is going to learn.
Well, I understand the FCCPC has gone around some major shopping centers in Nigeria, in Abuja, I should even say, and have shut down some of these that have sold, certain products above the price that they are intended to be sold at. I am aware of that.
We need to do more of that. We need to do more. Okay, let me give you an instance. And I think this is part of the thing we need to look at apart from the FCCPC. When it comes to the price increments, don't forget, fueling too and diesel is equally a factor that caused this.
As cost of production.
Yes, cost of production. And there is an alleged, it came out yesterday, by the CEO of Rain Oil, Mr. Gabriel. He said up to today, federal government is still paying subsidy. And he said federal government is paying around 600 billion on monthly basis on subsidy. And that means in my calculation, if it says federal government is paying about 600 billion on monthly on subsidy, it means that our daily consumption of fuel is around 40 million liters. And that means federal government is paying around 500 to 400. If federal government is paying 500 per liter on subsidy, that means federal government is paying about 20 billion naira on subsidy per day, and that is 600 billion per month.
Our time is fast spent, but this is definitely a conversation that we should have another time, and I will try to ensure that. I have been speaking with Bayonle Omoyele. He is an economic analyst and a tech analyst, and he has spoken largely to ways that we can address the current rising inflationary pressures, especially from the monetary and fiscal sides of government. Thank you very much for your insight on the program this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. So we look forward to conclude this part because it's important.
Definitely. Well, this is where we draw the curtains on today's edition of Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust TV. But join the conversation on social media. Let us hear from you. How can we, nip inflationary pressures in the board? Over time, we have seen inflation skyrocket. As we speak, food inflation is currently at over 40%. Let us hear from you. My name is Chiamaka Enendu. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.